Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Hello, everybody. This is Howard Fox, and welcome to another episode of the Success Insight podcast. Our guest today is Richard Allred. Richard is the President and CEO of ATS, a company that has provided innovative solutions to protect and treat the world's water since 1979. Richard has over 25 years of experience dealing with water issues affecting municipal, military, power generation, agriculture, mining, you name it. If it deals with water, Richard's company has been involved with ensuring that we are protecting our world's water supply. And in those 25 years, because he is the president and CEO, he has a lot of experience when it comes to leading, managing, mentoring, coaching employees. And Richard is also the publisher of the best-selling book, Purify, What Clean Water Teaches Us About Making Smarter Decisions in Business and in Life. Richard Allred, welcome to the Success Insight podcast.
Hey, Howard, how are you doing? It's great to be with you today.
Thank you so much. And I have to first state, I love the title of the book, Purify, and what clean water teaches us about making smarter decisions. And I would love if you could, before we dive into the book, is just share a little bit for our listeners, a little more about your background, how you got into this business, and what are some of the lessons you've picked up along the way?
I really got involved in water treatment. My father is a chemist and years ago started the company, and water treatment was the area that he chose to go in. Now, I'm not a chemist by any means, but I really enjoyed working with my father. He was a good, honest man, and I could see that as even a little kid. Sometimes I would get to travel to rural locations that were a little more friendly and letting little kids into their plants and seeing things. And as I watched that, it intrigued me. But one of the other things that really kept my interest in this is the importance of water for people in every industry. I realized really early in my career that treating water was kind of like living episodes of how it's made. I got to go see how oil's manufactured, how it's extracted, how computer components are made, gyroscopes, foods processed, insulation, just everything. And so it was a fascinating industry, and every location's unique, and every water from every location's different. And so there's different ways you have to attack the problem. So just a curiosity. And I thought, you know what, this is something that can be enjoyable for a career. And it helps everybody. Everybody's got to drink, everybody's got to eat, and all of us like the gadgets that water helps provide, electricity to cell phones to computers.
One of the insights I got from the reading of the book is I believe we take, in some ways, water for granted. Is we, here in the U.S., and I live in a major metropolitan area here in Chicago. You're out in Utah. I don't know the distance from, say, Salt Lake, but venture to guess, when you go to your tap to fill the teapot, coffee pot, or you take the shower, drink from the faucet, we anticipate that this water is going to be free of bad things, for the sake of better words. And I think we take it for granted. And then as I was going through the book, and you were interjecting stories from your history of some of the projects you've worked on in Brazil and the Middle East, and even spent a fair amount of content speaking about the water supply in Flint. And I'm from Detroit originally. And when that episode happened in Flint, it hits home, even though I live here in Chicago. But my sense is we take things for granted, and water being one of those.
Oh, for sure. Because all of us, those of us at least that were raised here in North America, the U.S., any of the developed nations, you go to the faucet, you turn it on, you have clean, potable water. You can drink it. There's been trends over the years to move towards bottled water. If you're in a developed country, your water's typically safe. Now, you have times when we'll have something happen, like Flint, and it becomes a really big deal because so many of us have taken it for granted for so long. we turn a faucet and water comes out. That doesn't happen everywhere. There's countries, just as you have brown outages, with the electricity in California sometimes, or that there's water issues that stop in lots of places, so they don't have water ongoing. But there's lots of places that just don't have water treatment. And we deal with the drinking water, but also the sanitation, the wastewater. And there's many countries and people that are not served at all or underserved by sewer treatment. For us, we flush the toilet and it's gone and everybody's good. But it's a big deal, and it's tricky because we have people looking at how, hey, we're contaminating this way or this way, but they really don't probably understand to what extent the problem's causing, because the water's still there, but it's dirtier, it's more contaminated, and it takes more resources and energy to retreat it so that we can use the water again for drinking.
A couple of items that also jumped out for me is I had a interview last week, a gentleman, John Dillinger. It works for an IT company out in Silicon Valley. So silicon, the microchip. And it never dawned on me that water is a component in the making, in the construction and production of that microchip, as it cleans the chip and all the I don't know what you would call it, precipitate, or the stuff. There's stuff that gets left behind as that chip is being produced. And what do you do with it? I have my Kindle. That's how I read your book. I have a smartphone, which is turned off. And all of these chips that are going into making it are getting more and more sophisticated. And it also means we're demanding more and more of these types of devices, which means we're going to demand more and more of the water. But we have little understanding or awareness of what actually went in to make it. The other story was one when you were negotiating to be a part of a project. I guess it was in Israel. Israel is known for its desalination plants. And it never dawned on me, after you desalinate the water, what do you do with the salt that's left over? It's got to go somewhere. And that was just the big takeaway, is we don't often understand the consequences of our decisions. And I think that also plays back into this whole idea of leadership. And do we share the full story? Do we just share with people, here's what you need to know? And you really have a point of view on that, just given your experience helping to create clean water for your clients and the working countries. But we don't really understand the implications of some of the decisions we're making.
Yeah, we really don't. And I live right here on Silicon Slopes. So we've got the big tech industry that's kind of migrated from California a bit, but it's a great industry, makes awesome things happen. But without water, you're not able to run it. And you've got to have people that can think through how you're going to perform this. Now, the water that's used for microchips or for creating your cell phone and all these electronic components, that's the most expensive water that's made. It's theoretically as pure as we can get it. And to do that, you've got to have a lot of waste. And so, how do you deal with that waste? How do you make it so that you can have a plant that's zero discharged? And fortunately, there's lots of people in the industry that really do want to make a difference. And, we had a customer, so that they could be zero discharged, did a project that had a 36-year payback. That'd be unheard if a bank was trying to finance that or anybody else. You're not going to do it. If it's going to take you 36 years to pay back to save a couple gallons of water, it's not going to happen. But you really do have people that really want to make a difference. They want to make the world better. And one of the things that I think is really interesting in the space, it doesn't move as quick. It's not as glamorous as tech industry, but it's every bit as important. You could argue more important, because you get thirsty every day. You can go a day without your cell phone. It's hard to go a day without the bathroom or drinking. But you have people in the industry that really are thinking, and they have to think long term, because what is going to be the consequence of what we're doing? And, that's one of the things that's really intrigued me, is watching people that really do take time and say, you know what, this could happen down the road. So let's be careful. And a lot of care is taken.
Fantastic. And I'd love to shift a little bit towards the book, because taking the time to make good decisions that is an important part of leadership, teamwork, getting the work done. If we go too quickly, we're under too much pressure, we have the propensity to make mistakes. Mistakes are costly. And as you were starting to think about, or maybe the question is, when did you begin to think about, one, I'd like to write this book, so Purify, what clean water teaches us about making smarter decisions in business and in life. How did you kick off this process? Is this something you've been taking notes all these years, or do you wake up one day, I want to write a book? How did that start?
I think the biggest thing I started originally, I jot notes down. What did I learn today, or what did I learn from interacting with this person? And everybody that you run into has something you can learn from them. I don't care who it is. If you listen to them and have a real good conversation with them, see them as a person, it doesn't matter what level they are, what they're doing, you can learn something from them. So I actually have a little electronic notepad, and I write down, okay, business principles, life principles, and have just always kind of tracked that. I hadn't really considered writing this book until come first of the year. I decided probably about October of last year. I thought, you know what, next year I'm writing a book. So I started the book on January 2nd. My plan was to release it in October, which would end up getting it released in October. But it was really just to try to help share some of the things that I've learned. You know, there's certain things that are true, certain principles that they don't change. And then as I've experienced different things in business, look at it, this is a lesson that can be learned. And whether it's my own experience or listening to other people, and here's kind of what they've gone through, then you learn from that. So I also read pretty extensively. I try to read 6, 7, 8 books a month.
That's a lot of books.
It is a lot of books. And I use the Audible for a lot of it, where I'm listening to it in high speed. I had some mission companions earlier in life that were blind, actually 2 of them, and they had little recorders at the time that would play books back for them high speed. It wasn't real common mainstream at the time, but I learned to listen at a high speed, and so I can kind of cruise through and then take notes and discuss, and have lots of discussions with my wife, and a lot of times we'll take turns reading books and share what we think.
As you were writing the book, I mean, you gave yourself a pretty short deadline. I mean, a year to write a book, and it is no small feat to write. I mean, there are programs out there that I can make you a best-selling author in a weekend. And I will admit, I participated in that, became a best-selling author, but I still had to do the work in 2 months. It was a lot harder than I ever imagined. But your book, there's a purpose behind your book. I mean, it's decision-making. It's what happens when we make bad decisions, or we're not honest about what our goals and intentions are, or people are afraid to admit that they make a mistake. So there's a lot deeper ideas going forth or coming out of your book than interviewing. My book is about interviewing other entrepreneurs about what they did. Okay, it was great, I said, but your book had to take some time. So you're collecting these notes. What was the discipline for you around the construction of this book and how you put the words to paper or to computer?
Yeah. So anyway, I had scheduled time every Friday, go through and, like real focused time, but I'd spend time during the week kind of collecting ideas and thinking things through, and then spend that time. And, in reality, to do this, you got to have a lot of help. My dear wife, Cara, spent countless hours proofing, arguing, rereading, discussing, because the content, it's my life. It's different than other books people write, where there's quite a bit of research that's done. There's probably less research in here just because it's my life. And so these are the experiences I've had. These are discussions I've had. But then in constructing it, reorganizing it. So I had help of friends and proofreaders and somebody that had written several books help guide me through the process, because it is really tedious, and to get something that comes through and flows and makes sense, and the final proof, you still have people saying, well, maybe go this way, maybe go that way. For me, it was important to get the word, the things that I feel are important. These are truths I want everybody to know, because I really do think they make people's lives better if they understand them. And so part of me at saying, you know what, it may not get a Pulitzer Prize, it may not be the best book ever written, but it's good enough and it's going to help people. And, I've received lots of emails to this point of people saying, hey, this has changed the way I think about life. It's changed how my paradigm is. So that was really the goal is how do I get people to shift their thinking a little bit so their life can be better. I watch tons of people struggle in life, and a lot of it's from one poor decision that leads to another poor decision, and that feeling that then they're trapped and there's not a way out, but there's always a way out. And even if you just artificially invent, here's door A, B, C, it takes some of that pressure off. Nobody makes their best decision under pressure. And I know Hollywood and other things would say, no, it's dramatic if they're making these decisions under pressure. We make our best decisions when we either have pre-thought through what we're going to do when that event arises. And so the decision was already made years ago or months ago, or if we have time to think about it, you go back to that high pressured salesperson. If the deal's got to happen now, it's not a good deal. So
there's two stories that jumped out. One was the whole multi-level marketing piece. Now, I'm actually a member of a multi-level marketing, which I don't use for multi-level marketing. It's send out cards, which they're in your backyard in Salt Lake City. Because at the end of the year, I want to send out cards. It's done electronically. It's efficient. But to go out there and sign somebody up as a distributor, it's like, if you're a coach like me, leadership development, yeah, you might want to use these cards because it makes it real easy for you. But if you're out there that you're going to make the money, and there was another one, and my gut, I remember the conversation, my gut just started turning. And what I had to learn is, when that gut starts to churn, walk away. And so that was not to disparage MLM, because there's a lot of people that love it. They're successful at it, and good for you.
And there's lots of good people doing it. There really are.
Yeah. And the other story I loved, and I think you kind of just alluded to it, is when there's a decision to be made, it's good to have a network of folks. Now, you're the fortunate, you've got your wife, Cara, you've got your kids, you've got your mentors to help you not necessarily make the decision for you, but to be a sounding board. Here's what's on my mind. This is what I'm thinking. You're not asking somebody to solve the problem. You're just asking for their feedback. What am I missing here? Is there something else I'm not seeing? And I love that one story when the marketing team was coming in. They wanted to do work for you so they could all of a sudden generate your revenue. And you went to your mentor and he just pulled you into his office and made them wait, and they eventually walked away. But I guess the idea, though, is having people on your team to be there as the sounding board. And most people don't take advantage of that. They're afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, really, most people are afraid to ask for help. And one of life's secrets is people love to help. People love to be asked what they think, what their insights are. All of us want to, at some level, feel like we have something to offer. And yeah, if you go ask somebody, hey, be my mentor, you're kind of setting them up for a commitment they may not want. But if you ask them for advice, they see you listen and execute, they're going to keep helping you. People will double down. I remember, I think it was a news commentator, Chris Matthews, saying that people always double down. If they've helped you and you're doing it, people are going to double down. Hearing him say that, really stuck out to me too, because people really do that. They want to help. And if you keep moving forward, they want to continue. People like to get on a train that's moving. They want to see progress and there's lots of people. And the cool thing is you can learn something from everybody. So it's asking.
Would you mind just talking a little bit about the construction of the book? I mean, we've got why we make bad decisions. There's adages in leadership development circles that leaders should not be afraid to make a mistake. I mean, there's mistakes that are extremely costly, but they're mistakes. Okay, it's a mistake. What did you learn so you don't happen to do it again? And then you've got the fundamentals for the decision making. Are there chapters or points in this book that either they were something that you wholeheartedly, like, this was me to a T, or a conversation? I mean, you've been all over the world with your business, that you learned some of these fundamentals from working with other people, where they had to go through. So I'm kind of curious on both ends of it, what you've learned yourself and what you've learned from working with others.
Let me maybe start with others first. I think one of the things that I've really learned is when you're dealing with somebody that's a level 5 leader, there's not a pride there. There's really is a humility there. They're very confident in what they do, but they also know themselves very well. Like, these are the 3 things, or these are the 5 things that I do better than anybody. And everything else, I've got to find people that are smarter, better. And there's never a fear of, I'm going to get people too smart around me. It's like, no, everybody around me better be smarter than me, because I do these 5 things really good, but I don't do everything else good. So that was something that I really learned from watching them. I've dealt with lots of people that would be in the upper echelons, I guess, around the world, the billionaires. And the ones that I've interacted with, it's a small segment compared to the ones that are there. They're actually really good people. They know themselves really well, and they know the things that they do really well. Of course, there's always the hot shot on the side, but the ones that I've personally interacted with, I actually just met with one this week. I had a great discussion with him. I could tell from our conversation and his knowledge and insights that this guy was successful. 2 days after I left his home, found out how successful he was, and it was quite a bit more. And it was just somebody that thought we ought to get to know each other. And so we sat down and had an hour conversation, and probably end up having a good friendship long term. But anyway, these people know who they are. They know what their weaknesses are, and if you ran into them, you'd never guess the amount of success they have and the power in that they have.
That's being humble. It's humility.
Yeah. So I've learned a lot from watching those. The ones that I feel like are good leaders. There's others that make lots of money that I don't see as good leaders or role models, and I wouldn't want my kids to follow. Or, I've got 6 kids, and I want them to have good lives. And that there's a lot more to life than money. So I've learned a lot from them. From my own experience, it's kind of learning to be real with what things you're really good at, and you can tell that a lot by what you're drawn to, what things you really have an interest and passion. And for myself, I love the conceptualizing and getting people to cooperate, especially people that typically wouldn't cooperate. So we do a lot of innovation within the water industry, within the safety space, and getting to cooperate people that normally wouldn't work together. And it makes some pretty cool products, some pretty cool innovations. But that's because that's what I enjoy doing. And I'm well aware of that. Now, the details and the things that have to happen day to day, the tactical things, that's not as much of my skill set. So when I hire people, I have to hire people that really love that part of it. And they eat, breathe, sleep the tactical. How do we execute? How do we create the processes and stuff? And yeah, I have insights, because of training and experience in life, but I've got to have these people that are a lot smarter than me. So, I look at my executive staff, and all of them are smarter than me, but I have a couple skill sets that really make the team work together. So that's what I'm good at. And I don't have an illusion that I need to be doing other things. And I don't try to say I'm going to become this so that I'm complete. I probably won't ever be a complete. I have certain talents that I believe are God-given, and I'm going to magnify those and do the best I can with those.
We can always learn, and we're continuing to learn, hopefully. And if we already know what our sweet spot is, what our capabilities are, that's great. Though we can still continue to learn. And if there's something that's out of my wheelhouse, I'm going to bring a smart person in and ask them to take on that responsibility. I need to know that they're performing and completing the work, but I can rely that they're going to actually execute it. Something dawned on me when you're talking about bringing the right people in. I love your approach to recruiting. I'm doing a little recruiting now for a Bay Area company, and the idea, and I'm going to start to ask this, by the way. So, Richard, I'm taking your idea, is ask somebody, what was the last book you read? I love that.
Yeah, if they're not curious, if they're not constantly learning, they're going to have that same interest in your company. They're punching a time clock, and people don't get ahead, and companies don't get ahead when they're working with people that are just punching a card. They've got to be engaged, and there's so many cool things in life to be engaged in. So for employees, find the place that you're really engaged, and for employers, same thing. Find people that are engaged and excited about what you're doing.
Excellent. Now, what have you learned, or what are some of the takeaways that perhaps have made their way into the book from the interactions working with individuals in different cultures overseas? Because you're in Central and South America, you're in Africa, you're in the Middle East, and culturally, decisions get made different ways. I mean, there's decisions that's all about sitting down, having a cup of coffee or a drink or whatever this might be before we actually talk business. Or there's some people are like, let's get to this. I mean, us here in the US, I guess depending on where we live in the country, some of us are like, let's get to it. There's time later to celebrate. What have been some of the lessons learned from the individuals outside of ATS that have made their way onto your lessons learned, or perhaps into the book?
I think one of the big things is this realization that people are really smart around the world. And I hate to say it because it may be a little stereotype, but we're very ethnocentric as a country. As kids, everything that's good that's been invented is invented here. And that's not really the case. There are very smart people all over the world. I remember sitting in a meeting in Sabespi, which is Sao Paulo water organization, and they showed me a book on how they had categorized and segmentation of algae and what works and doesn't work. And it was actually the coolest thing I've seen on that. And their comment was, well, anytime you have 20 million people living together, you're going to have a couple that just love this and they're going to be really good at it. And there's lots that can be learned from them, just how they're doing things a little different. The other thing is important, like learn to adapt to what they're doing because it's right for the system that they're living in. And this can be really challenging because things do move really fast paced in the US. And I have customers and suppliers I have never met. Latin America is more relationship based. And so that time it takes. And a couple trips ago when I was down, I think it was back in April, I was down and, they said, well, we're going to get to a meeting. We were probably already 30 minutes late for the suggested time for the meeting. And a couple gentlemen I were with said, you know what, you really are a native to Brazil because you're not panicking. And everybody we've had from other countries, Europe, the US, would be freaking out because we're late to the meeting. And you realize the guy that set the meeting may go home and take a shower and have some lunch and show up at 5, and it's not because they're trying to be rude or anything. It's just life happens and it's difficult to move around. But they communicate within those and the changes and stuff. And so it works out. And so if you work with the system instead of trying to say, hey, we're going to do it this way, our way's the right way, our way's the right way for here, and our way's not the right way for the other countries that we deal with and the other people.
I'm curious, as you're laying out this example, there's an area of study, there's emotional intelligence, so how we manage our emotions, but there's a whole other area of cultural intelligence, how we recognize other cultures, how they make decisions, how they interact, their views of time, their views of distance, how they make decisions, etc. And when you started to work with your dad, you went on trips with him, perhaps even overseas. When did the realization that I can't go into another country with a potential client and be the American that knows it all? I was called a know-it-all. I remember when I was in the UK, somebody says, you Americans, you think you know everything. And it's like, whoa. And I was still too immature to realize I didn't know everything. And I really didn't know everything. When did you realize wait a minute here, I have to understand who these folks are, what's driving them, how they make decisions, etc. I can't go in as this, I'm an American, we know everything.
That actually happened years ago. Probably 27 years ago, I was serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Campinas, Brazil mission. And I remember going to my first city was Birigui, and I remember walking around thinking, I could show these guys how to fix lots of things. But after a short period of time, and I really started to see the people as these are real people. They have hopes and dreams. They have desires. They're children of our Father in heaven. As that change happened, I started to see, you know what, these are good people. They're smart people. The way they're doing it is right for here. And so that happened years ago as a missionary, knocking doors and meeting with the rich, the poor, the impoverished, and seeing all of them are people and all of them really matter. And all of them have good thoughts and ideas and hopes and dreams. And the thing that really struck me is every place I've been, everybody wants the same thing for their children, for their grandkids. They really do want a good life. They want them to be honest. They want them to be productive. Seeing that really shifted my mind.
Very good. And speaking of the wanting the best for our kids and as parents, grandparents, the work that you're doing at Empower Mali, that was very interesting, of helping them kind of navigate the issue of water, because in Africa they have a water issue. And how did you, maybe we don't have the full time that we would like to talk about it, but if you could maybe share some 30,000 foot view of what Empower Mali is and the work that you and ATS have been doing over there.
Empower Mali is an organization that builds schools closer to where the people are, so in the villages. And what this does is it makes it so that kids don't have to go fetch water so they can attend school. A real big protection is for girls that once they start hitting puberty, most of them drop out of school because they're going to be raped. Bad things are going to happen on their way to school or to work. And so we're putting the schools within their village so that they don't have that. And what it does is it means instead of a girl stopping at 5th grade, 6th grade, she's going to make it to high school and become educated, maybe have a chance to go to college. A component of that is you've got to have water in the area. So Empower Mali had worked out a deal with a gentleman named Yase Manki, who has run for president a couple times there, where the federal government would provide professors that are trained, educated. We would build the school, and the local village would provide the land and the upkeep for that school. So that partnership to make sure that things would keep going. As a company, ATS, we've gone back in now and started doing water systems on our own. We've set up a nonprofit called Cara that we have funded projects ourselves, and we'll continue to do that. And part of that's because a lot of our suppliers or a lot of our customers are saying, hey, how do we get involved with our understanding of the best water practices, the best sanitation practices, and then this mindset of how can we simplify it. So a system we put in Mali in August, we have a basketball team, high school kids install the system. So the system's simple, solar powered. It provides the disinfection where lots of wells are drilled. This is actually provides the disinfection. So it's safe drinking water. And the one that went in August provided water for 1,000 people that had never had water within 5 miles of their village before. And now they have drinking water there for all those people. So there's lots that can be done. And, as we look at it, the future, this Cara and ATS, as we do this partnership with our organization, we're going to be able to provide clean, safe drinking water. We're going to be able to provide reasonable sanitation, means for people to deal with their sewer and that, so it doesn't contaminate the water. And then the other thing that we do is ag water. And so we can help the crops grow, but we also hope to roll out in these developing areas where we can put some of the nutrition, the micronutrients into the plant, and so that we can eliminate the malnutrition. So water is still unsafe water is still the number one killer in the world, more than wars, heart attacks, accidents, all that. drinking water that's not safe is our biggest killer. And we really believe we have the tools to do that. Now, our goal going forward is to work with other organizations as well, like the Safe Water Network, where we can team up and really bring these solutions.
Some of these same principles that are in the book about making decisions and what leadership is and how you develop your teams, your staff, are you finding that those same principles are translatable when you're over into areas of the world where struggling to put food on the table, water to drink is more important than the decisions that have to be made or how we treat people? So I'm curious how some of the principles within the book then translate to how you're going over there and perhaps being the role model, the mentors, the guides to help those organizations think about things, a little different, do things a little bit different, behave a little bit different.
So that's what makes, what I really see them as what makes them principles is they're universally true. The law of gravity affects everybody the same way. And these things that I describe as principles in the book, I really believe are true and universal. Now, when you're helping people, you've got to meet their temporal needs first. If you're hungry and that, then you're not going to be looking that much into this spiritual or higher level of thing because you're starving. And so you need to help with those. But it is a series, and those principles are correct and true. And as you help people understand them, it does change their life and make things better.
Fantastic. Richard, in the time we have left, I want to share with our audience, I would like to share with our audience the best ways to get a hold of you, to learn more about you and your work. But there's a question I'm just begging to ask, because right over your shoulder is a set of golf clubs.
Oh, yeah.
That shoulder.
All right.
And I am curious because I have a client who is a professional golfer and she's very interested in leadership. So as a business owner, an executive, a leader, a mentor, a guide, what has golf shown you or demonstrated for you about what leadership means?
I think part of it is keeping your head. And I wish I golfed more than I do. I try to get out as often as I can. But this idea that sometimes you can't, just go, you've shot off in the rough or whatever. If you try to go straight to the hole, it doesn't work out. Sometimes you got to divert. So sometimes you got to slow down to speed up. And you've got to keep your head about you, because you get done with that hole and you're really starting at zero at the next hole. And business and life, there's lots of times we have setbacks, and a lot of times you have discussions that are unfun, and then you got to put smiles on and go to the next meeting and make it work out. So that persistence is good. And one of the things for me where golf's been great is it's a great time for me to discuss business with my wife. The two of us will go golfing and do that, or with a board member or a friend, where we can discuss business principles. And since I spend most of my time with close friends, we can discuss business principles, we can discuss raising children, we can discuss life's principles and why we're on the course. So it gives us some time to do that.
Great. Thank you for that. So Richard, again, before we head out, and I really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day. I know you've got a lot on your plate. It's been a great interview and gives us a chance to learn more about your book, Purify. I love that title. Clean water teaches us about making smarter decisions in business and in life. If our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where's the best places for them to go?
The book has a simple website, purifybook.com. Howard, another place that they could go is ATS, smartsolutions.com. And that's more company based. But either of those places, they can get a hold of us if they'd like more information. The book can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and hard copy, softbound or digital. So
Sounds good.
My Audible book's coming in the spring. So,
are you speaking, or did you bring in another voice?
You know what? I have a dear friend that is a chemical engineer that has always wanted to do Audible book, and so he's doing the voice. And anyway, he has a great voice. Every time I hear him speak, I think he ought to be doing radio.
Fantastic. Well, once again, Richard, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us on the Success Insight podcast.
Hey, Howard, I appreciate being here, and we'll hope to see you around.
There you have it, folks. We've just been chatting with Richard Allred. He is the author of the best-selling book, Purify, What Clean Water Teaches Us About Making Smarter Decisions in Business and in Life. And if you'd like to learn more about Richard and his work, you can visit the book website, purifybook.com, and atssmartsolutions.com. Also, we'll provide the links to those websites as well as to the book page on Amazon. And as we say every day, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there and have a phenomenal day. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Success Insight podcast. Take care now.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.